I used to think I'd tremble walking down the aisle, but I didn't, not even slightly. The light inside the church shone like a spotlight. My footsteps echoed steadily. The white wedding dress brushed softly across the wooden floor. Whispers died down, then vanished completely. All eyes were on me. My mother wiped away tears. My father looked at me with pride. And me, I just stared ahead. He was standing there, dressed in a tailored gray suit. His brown eyes, the same as always good at pretending to love. Beside him stood my best friend, the maid of honor, smiling far too brightly, as if nothing was breaking apart in this very room. I walked up to the altar. The priest smiled. Everything played out exactly as planned. Then came the vows. He turned to me, a hint of nervousness in his eyes. He didn't know what I knew. He thought he was still hiding it. Good. The priest asked, "Do you take this man to love and remain faithful to him for the rest of your life?" I didn't answer right away. I took out my phone. From beneath the layers of white veil, I quietly pulled out a small iPhone, screen already open to a message thread. No one was smiling anymore. I began to read. My voice was steady, clear, without a tremor. "I think she's starting to suspect. Let her. I need to marry her. Financial stability is what I'm after. And you're hot enough to keep me from going crazy every night. After the wedding, we can still see each other. Who's gonna know?" Silence. Not a single sound. I didn't cry. I had never planned to cry. I continued. "I love you, not her. I just need this wedding to keep up appearances. Trust me, we'll have everything soon." Last night was still the best yet. A clutch dropped at the back of the church. Someone gasped. I looked straight at him. He froze. Sweat began forming at his temples. I turned to my best friend. "You once said I'd never do anything to hurt you. Then what is this?" She stepped back half a pace. Her smile was gone. I put my phone away. My voice remained even. "Thank you all for coming. This wedding is over." I didn't look back. I didn't run. I didn't throw the bouquet. I walked away, slowly. My heels clicked across the marble floor like measured strikes. The church doors opened. Light flooded in. I stepped outside, free. And behind me, everything collapsed. I met him in a place where people swore they came to find God. Sunday mornings were quiet back then. Coffee brewed in the church kitchen. The same dozen faces nodding to the same old hymns. But he was new, clean-cut, calm. A little too perfect, maybe, but I was raised to believe that goodness shows itself in the quiet ones. We started talking after one of the group Bible studies. He had answers to every question, always said the right thing. Not preachy, just polished. He told me he had come back to faith after a few rough years in business, that he'd made it big, lost it all, and found clarity in the wreckage. That story changed slightly over time, but I didn't notice until much later. His name was Matthew Hayes. On paper, 33 years old, self-made consultant, lived alone, no kids, no ex-wife. That last part turned out to be a lie. He wasn't the first man to look at me like I was worth staying for, but he was the first to convince me I could be safe with him, that my past didn't make me unlovable. I had learned early what it meant to be the one who got left behind. My father was a seasonal man present in bursts, gone without notice. My mother passed when I was 15. My aunt raised me. Kind woman, strict hands. She taught me to hold my breath when things got hard, and how to stay polite, even when I was bleeding. That's also where I met Ava, my cousin. She and I grew up side by side, like two pieces of a mismatched puzzle forced into the same frame. Ava was blonde, extroverted, always in motion. I was the quieter one, always watching. She was the star. I was the shadow she never acknowledged. She'd say things like, "We're like sisters," with a smile that never reached her eyes. and I'd nod because saying nothing was safer. By the time we hit our 20s, Ava had cycled through 3 boyfriends, 4 jobs, and a minor scandal involving someone's husband that no one talked about. I stayed out of her path. We were still close in the way that people expect cousins to be: holiday photos, family brunches, forced laughter, but I never told her much. So when Matthew and I started dating, I kept him to myself for a while. It wasn't just because of Ava. I wanted something that felt untouched, something that hadn't already passed through the hands of others. And Matthew, for all his polish and charm, felt new. Like I could finally be seen for who I was, not just who I appeared to be. He was attentive in ways I wasn't used to, remembered things I said in passing, sent flowers just because, took me to dinner with his friends and made space for my opinions. I thought maybe this is what real partnership looks like: ease and small consistencies. 6 months in, he proposed during a weekend retreat. Just the 2 of us. Simple. No grand speech. Just a velvet box and a question asked with steady eyes. I said yes. A month later, Ava came back into the picture. Claimed she'd been figuring things out on the West Coast. She was suddenly interested in reconnecting. Wanted to help with wedding planning. Said she missed girl time. I didn't question it. Not then. I should've. It started small. A glance too long between them when they thought I wasn't looking. A quiet chuckle from Matthew at one of Ava's offhand remarks that wasn't even funny. A lipstick stain on the coffee mug in his apartment turd. Not my color. I ignored it. Not because I didn't see, but because I was trained to suppress. To breathe through discomfort, to smooth over cracks with polite smiles and second guesses. She's just being friendly, I told myself. She flirts with everyone. She knows he's off limits. But the thing about Ava was she never believed anything was off limits. Not if she wanted it badly enough. It got harder to pretend when she started dropping by unannounced. I was in the area, she'd say, breezing past me into the living room, dropping her coat on the arm of the couch, her perfume lingering like a warning. Matthew never seemed surprised to see her. That's what got me. One day I asked, lightly, "You two talk much when I'm not around?" He looked at me, calm. "She texts sometimes. Just about the wedding. You know how she is." I nodded. I did know how she was. That was the problem. A week later, I saw it. I was using Matthew's iPad to check something for the florist. A message popped up in the top corner of the screen. "Ava, you still thinking about Saturday night?" There was no context, but there didn't need to be. I stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for the universe to explain it away. It didn't. No follow-up ping, no innocent clarification. I closed the iPad and said nothing. The next day, I followed her. I'm not proud of it, but pride was no longer the currency I traded in. She told me she was meeting a friend downtown. I waited until she left, then took my car and parked 2 blocks down from the bistro she mentioned. It didn't take long. She showed up, hair curled, lips painted, too much perfume for a casual coffee. 10 minutes later, Matthew walked in. No hesitation. He kissed her on the cheek like it was muscle memory. They sat in the far corner, the booth with the most privacy. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I stayed in my car, engine off, watching the windows fog with their laughter. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The next few weeks were a performance. I smiled. I baked. I invited Ava to try on bridesmaid dresses. I kissed Matthew goodnight. Every movement was calculation. I was gathering, watching how often he checked his phone, how long he took to answer mine. I searched receipts, tracked locations, monitored calendars. Not like a woman desperate to hold on, like one preparing for precision. What I learned could have broken me. They'd been seeing each other for 3 months. It started, Ava claimed in a message to him, as a joke, but became more real than I expected. He said, "It's you I think about when I'm lying next to her." She replied, "Then maybe you're lying next to the wrong person." He didn't deny it. They'd met at hotels, cheap ones. They'd planned weekends, while I was away for venue tours. They'd even mocked me. Ava, she's too soft to notice. Always was. Matthew, she's too good. The kind who makes you feel guilty when you cheat. Guilt. He mentioned guilt. Not regret. That distinction stuck with me. I printed everything. Not because I was ready to confront them, but because I needed the truth to feel tangible. Something I could hold, read, stare at until the disbelief died and the facts became stone. I thought about canceling the wedding, about walking away quietly, letting them rot in their secrecy. But then I remembered Ava at my kitchen table, humming while helping me write invitations. I remembered Matthew, slipping his arm around my waist after I'd just shown him the final guest list, saying, "This is going to be perfect." I remembered how they both looked me in the eye, lied without blinking. So I decided they would have their wedding. But it wouldn't end how they planned. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't confront them. I didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they'd hurt me. Instead, I wrote vows. Not the ones a bride recites in front of God and a congregation, but vows to myself. Promises written in silence and cemented in clarity. I vowed that I wouldn't walk away invisible again. That this betrayal wouldn't be swept under the rug like all the others. That I would not be the victim, they would be the reveal. So I planned. Every lie they built, I would dismantle quietly, precisely. And in front of everyone they fooled. First, I created a folder, labeled it Truth. Inside, screenshots of every message, dates, times, photos, audio recordings. There was even a voicemail, Ava whispering, "I love you. She's too naive to know what she's sleeping next to." I backed it all up to the cloud, made a private drive, locked it behind a passcode, sent copies to an encrypted email I never used, just in case. Then I crafted my script. A monologue of sorts, not emotional, not vengeful, just facts. Plain, ugly facts. Each line sharpened, like glass. Each pause timed to let the room inhale my silence. Then, I rewrote my wedding vows. On paper, they looked beautiful, flowery, traditional. But the version I carried in my head was different. The real one would be read on the altar. Next came rehearsals. I stood in my bedroom at midnight, practicing the cadence, the pauses, the exact pitch of calm. I didn't want to stutter. I didn't want to sound angry. Anger could be dismissed, but control? That would cut deeper. I kept planning. I had the videographer switched at the last minute to someone I hired directly, someone who'd agreed to keep the camera rolling no matter what. I made sure the mic on the altar would be live and unmuted. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ava brought over a bottle of wine. She plopped herself on my couch like nothing was wrong, talking about seating charts and signature cocktails. Her nails sparkled. Her lies did too. "You nervous?" she asked. I smiled. Not even a little. She laughed. "You always were the composed one. God, I envy that." I almost laughed. Instead, I topped off her glass and toasted to honesty. She clinked her glass to mine without flinching. Matthew was worse. He kissed me like he always had, touched my lower back when we walked, whispered his love with eyes full of fiction. He even wrote his own vows, printed them on ivory cardstock, and gave them to me just in case I wanted to match the format. I kept them. I planned the layout of the ceremony. Ava would stand to my left, as maid of honor. Matthew across from me. Our families seated in front, friends behind. A perfect audience. I asked the wedding coordinator to change the playlist, said I wanted a slower instrumental while I walked down the aisle. It wasn't about the music. I just needed the silence after it to last longer. long enough for my words to settle. The night before the wedding, I slept like a stone. I didn't dream. When I woke, the sky outside was pale and cold, the kind of gray that looks clean. I showered, dressed, sat in the makeup chair, and let someone else paint the calm I already felt. The stylist asked if I was excited. "I'm ready," I said, and I meant it. At the venue, I stood behind the doors, bouquet in hand, heartbeat steady. The music began. Everyone stood. I walked slowly, purposefully. Every step forward felt like a sentence closing, like a chapter ending. At the altar, Matthew smiled. Ava beamed. The priest welcomed everyone, talked about love, about unity, about commitment. And then he asked if we'd like to read our vows. Matthew offered to go first. He read his lines like he meant them. He always did. Something about his voice made lies sound like gospel. When he finished, he took my hand, and I began. At first, I used the real vows, the ones I wrote on paper, 2 sentences in. Then I stopped. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I have to speak from the heart." The priest nodded. So did Matthew. I pulled the folded note from my bodice, unfolded it, cleared my throat, and read. In the past 6 months, I've learned what love is and what it absolutely isn't. Love isn't sneaking off to hotels with my cousin while promising forever to me. Love isn't mocking the woman you plan to marry in texts to your mistress. Gasps. Movement. Ava blinked. Matthew froze. I continued. I don't need to say more, but I will. Because if you could lie so easily, then I can speak just as clearly. Then I read their messages, line by line, word for word, no filter. No one moved. I didn't cry. I closed the note. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "There will be no wedding." And then I walked away. The doors closed behind me with a soft thud. Outside, the morning was quiet almost. Too quiet. No traffic, no wind, just silence, like the world itself had paused, waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't run, didn't sob in a car, didn't collapse on a hotel bed with mascara running down my cheeks. I walked 3 blocks to a cafe that had just opened for the day, ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. The barista glanced at the lace hem of my wedding dress peeking out beneath the trench coat, then looked away. No questions. Just caffeine. I sipped slowly. My hands didn't shake. 15 minutes later, the first messages came in. Ava. What the hell did you do? Matthew. Please, just talk to me. This isn't the place or the way. We can explain. There was no we anymore. I turned off my phone. By noon, the internet had done what it always does. Someone from the guest list had uploaded the video. The full audio. Me. Standing there in white, voice steady, exposing every lie. The video spread. Quickly. By the end of the day, it had over 300,000 views. By nightfall, it was a trending topic. A local wedding gone wrong, betrayal, scandal. Family drama all wrapped in a 3-minute takedown. The title read, Bride exposes cheating groom and cousin at the altar, leaves without a word. And I did leave without a word. But the echo remained. Ava lost her sponsorship deal within 48 hours. She had been working as a lifestyle. Influencer brands didn't want to be associated with toxic morality. Her comment section turned brutal. She tried to issue a statement, claimed I'd misunderstood, that it had been emotional confusion between her and Matthew. Nobody believed her. Matthew's business didn't fare much better. He was on the verge of closing a deal with a high-profile investor who happened to be a woman with a daughter who had been cheated on once. The deal vanished overnight. He tried to call again, left a voicemail this time. His voice cracked halfway through. I made a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was scared. scared of not having enough. Washay made me feel like I could win again. But it was never love. You were the only one who ever... I deleted the message. 3 weeks passed. The press quieted down. The story faded. New scandals replaced mine. But for them, the damage had already sunk in. I moved out of the apartment, gave notice, packed only what I needed. People asked what came next. Friends, distant relatives, even strangers on the internet. You're so brave. I could never do what you did. Are you okay? I didn't answer any of them, because bravery wasn't what I felt. I felt cold, controlled, like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding but hadn't healed. What came next wasn't a new chapter. It was the absence of one. And I had to learn how to live inside that silence. The final nail came a month later. An email from a woman named Claire Whitmore. Subject: You don't know me, but I knew him. I almost deleted it. I didn't. She said she was Matthew's ex-fiancé, the one before me, the one he never mentioned. They'd been engaged for 8 months. He left without explanation. Ghosted her. She later found out he'd taken 20-0 from a joint investment they were building, claimed it was for a business pivot. It disappeared. She never saw a dime. I saw your video, she wrote. You ended what I couldn't. Thank you. At the bottom of the email was an attachment: court documents, a civil lawsuit filed under Claire's name against Matthew Hayes for fraud and emotional damages. It included her lawyer's information. She asked if I'd be willing to submit a statement. I agreed. Not out of vengeance. Out of clarity. He had hurt people long before me, and he would have continued. People like Matthew only stop when someone turns on the lights. I wasn't just leaving him behind. I was closing a loop. I watched Ava's last attempt to reclaim her image. A video filmed in soft lighting. No makeup, hair undone, tears barely falling. She spoke to the camera like a friend. I made a mistake, she said. But haven't we all? Then came the spin. We were both vulnerable. I didn't plan this. I was hurting too. Sometimes love shows up in the wrong way. She didn't say my name once. Didn't apologize. Just framed herself as a victim of passion. The comments turned on her fast. One wrote, "Love doesn't sneak around. It walks through the front door." Another, "You weren't vulnerable. You were just sure she wouldn't fight back." I didn't respond. Not once. Let them drown in their own versions. I had no need to rewrite the story. I'd already published it live, in front of God and everyone. I left the city without ceremony. No farewell dinner. No last walk through the apartment. No long gaze out the balcony window like in the movies. I just packed the essentials into 2 suitcases, canceled the lease, and walked away. A quiet departure. The kind they never expect from someone who was supposed to break down. I rented a small studio 2 towns over. Neutral walls, no view, no history. The silence was thick at first, the kind that presses against your ribs. But over time, it began to feel like space-like breathing room. Like mine. No one knew where I was, except for a lawyer I'd retained for the deposition in Claire's case. No interviews, no more messages. I let the noise fade. What remained was simple. Me, a table, a bed, and the quiet comfort of not being watched. I started running again. At 6 a.m., before the sun cleared the rooftops. Back then, I couldn't run far. My lungs hadn't caught up with the rest of me. But the rhythm helped. The pavement didn't ask questions. It just received your weight, step by step, until something inside began to loosen. On one of those runs, I passed a bookstore. Small, old, half-hidden beneath ivy. I stopped, walked in. The owner was an older woman named Marjorie. She didn't smile much, but her eyes were sharp. She glanced at the bags under mine and didn't ask questions. I asked if she needed help organizing the shelves. She said yes. I started working 2 afternoons a week, sorting paperbacks and dusting covers. It wasn't about the money. It was about the silence between the stacks, the kind I could fill on my own terms. Weeks passed. One day, Marjorie asked if I wrote. I said I used to. She told me to start again. I did. Not fiction. Not poetry. Just words. Honest ones. I wrote about betrayal. About performance. About the masks women wear because society tells them they must never appear ungrateful. I submitted one piece anonymously to a small online journal. They published it. The comments were quiet at first. Then more came in. From women. From men. From strangers who had their own stories of silence and gaslighting and public smiles that hid private breakdowns. I didn't reply to any of them, but I read every single one. And then I wrote another. And another. Eventually, people started to ask who I was. I didn't tell them. Let them wonder. Let the words speak louder than the face. Then came the final letter. It arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name, printed in a careful hand. Inside, a single page. Matthew. He wrote that he'd watched the video at least 100 times. That it haunted him. That he couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. That he was getting therapy. That he had ended things with Ava for good. That he wanted to meet. Just once. To explain himself. Face to face. No apology. Just a request. I folded the letter in half. Then in half again. Dropped it in the trash. Some truths don't need confrontation. Some endings don't deserve closure. Let him sit in the silence I had once drowned in. Let him finally understand the weight of being unheard. Ava didn't reach out. Not once. She'd moved to another state, rebranded her online presence, dyed her hair, changed her handle. Her follower count dropped, then plateaued, then disappeared. She tried to become someone new, but the internet never forgets. The last thing I saw of her was a photo posted by someone else, sitting alone at an airport bar, staring at her phone. Unreadable expression. It didn't make me feel anything. That was the victory. Not revenge. Not justice. Just indifference. One afternoon, Marjorie asked if I wanted to take over the store when she retired. I said maybe. Not because I wanted it, but because the idea of staying in one place no longer terrified me. The idea of being known even slightly no longer felt like a risk. I was rebuilding something. Slowly. Quietly. Without an audience. People think strength is the loud part, the confrontation, the declaration. But real strength is walking away and meaning it. It's silence that doesn't beg to be filled. It's not needing to be heard because you finally believe yourself. That's what the church never taught me. That's what they tried to take from me. And it's what I will never lose again. I saw them once more. By accident. It had been over a year. I was back in the city briefly picking up a rare book for Marjorie from an estate sale. The air was dry, brittle with the kind of early winter cold that cracks your knuckles. I was standing in line for coffee when I heard my name. Not said. Laughed. Soft. Familiar. I turned slowly. There they were, Matthew and Ava. Across the street. Outside some overpriced brunch spot. They didn't see me. They were mid-conversation. She was talking. He was smiling. But there was a fatigue in it. Like muscle memory. Like pretending. They looked older. Not in the way years age you, but in the way shame dulls you. Something was missing in both of them, the glow they used to wear so confidently. For a moment, I wondered if they'd lasted, if they tried to rebuild something on top of the ashes they made of me. But then I realized it didn't matter. Not anymore. I stepped out of line, walked the opposite direction. Not hurried. Not shaken. Just done. It's strange what we carry with us after the fire. Not the screams. Not the betrayals, not the names, but the quiet, the after, the shape of who we become when no one's watching. I used to define myself by what others handed me: love, approval, attention. Now I define myself by what I refuse to carry: the need to be understood, the hunger for closure, the belief that justice has to be seen to be real. None of those things matter now, because what I gained, what I earned in silence, can't be stolen again. Sometimes I still dream of the altar, but in the dream, I'm not dressed in white. I'm standing in the center of the room, in black, calm, watching the audience turn, watching truth rise like a slow flame from my mouth while everyone else burns in disbelief. And when I wake, I don't feel anger. I feel clean. Marjorie passed the store to me 6 months later. She said she was moving south, closer to her sister. I didn't hesitate. Took the keys, changed the locks, gave the place a new name: Stone, Quiet. A nod to who I used to be, and who I chose to become. The shop draws a certain kind of person now. Not tourists, not collectors, but wanderers. People looking for something soft in a world that forgot how to be gentle. I don't ask questions. Just hand them pages. Let them sit as long as they like. Sometimes, they ask about the name. I tell them it's from a poem. I don't tell them it's from a scar. I published my first collection under a pseudonym. Essays, fragments, wounds reframed as architecture. The title, The Bride Who Stayed Silent. It found its audience. Not viral, not loud, but steady, like rain. I started receiving letters again, real ones, in envelopes, written by hand. From women who left, from men who were broken, from daughters raised in houses where truth was punished. They didn't ask for advice. They just said, "Thank you for telling the story I couldn't." That's when I knew. I had become more than what happened to me. I had become the one holding the pen. One night, I returned to the chapel, not for God, just to see if the silence still held. It did. The building was smaller than I remembered, the pews dustier, the light duller, but the air was the same thick, with promises made and broken. I sat in the back, let my breath slow. There were no sermons that day, no choir, no audience, only me, and the echo of who I used to be. I didn't cry, just sat there, quiet, still, listening, not for voices, but for peace. It came, not loudly, but finally. You think the worst part of betrayal is the moment you find out. It's not. It's what comes after. The unraveling, the doubt, the mirror that asks, "How did you not see?" But what they don't tell you is, the wound is not your shame. The silence that follows, that's your freedom. You get to decide how long you bleed, when you stop, and what you build from the ruin. I built a life. No grand declarations, no revenge fantasies. Just the quiet satisfaction of being whole again. They took my wedding day. They took my trust. But they did not take me. I walked away in silence. And in that silence, I found everything.